If there's one area of my life that has done the most damage as well as the most good for me since coming out, it's the area of love. Before I came out, I never had a boyfriend, nor did I ever date a guy. So it didn't take long after coming out before I dove face first into the area of love and the chaotic world of dating in the gay community. So today, I thought I would tell you some of the greatest lessons I learned in love and some of the most defining moments for me that changed my life and made me into the man I am now. When I turned 19, just after coming out, that whole first year was a series of firsts for me. And a huge first was falling in love for the first time in my life. I was so young and had never experienced anything like that before, and it consumed me. You're always thinking about that person, texting them. All you want to do is talk to them and wonder if they're thinking about you. And it didn't help that I was a hopeless romantic. So that resulted in many moments of melodrama, the longing, and worse yet, that they were in a relationship with someone else, and that only amplified my longing for them. There is something so powerful in the first love, and I found myself thinking all the time that we met when we did for a reason, and that we were meant to be together, but the universe would keep us apart just for right now. And then when we never got together and it didn't happen, I was left with another new, powerful feeling, and that was my first time having my heart broken. I felt so worthless and defeated over something I never could actually claim to have been mine to lose. I was a wreck over that first love, and I put so much of myself into longing for that relationship, but it was my first time being so emotionally strained and broken where it allowed me to piece my heart back together again for the first time, really. It was that same year I also lost my virginity to someone else who wasn't my first love, and I'm certainly not proud to whom I lost my virginity to. I was always a sucker for a charmer, and I wore my heart on my sleeve, and it wasn't until after I was intimate with this guy where I fully learned more of his true colors, and I was personally angry at myself for becoming another name he could add to his black book of sexual conquests. And I do regret falling for the charm and the quote-unquote bad guy with a distinct reputation that I knew about, even before going into it. But I rationalized that maybe I was different and he cared for me in ways that he didn't with other guys, like we've done so many times before. It was around our third meeting where I knew we would have sex, and I allowed it to happen. And I only regret who I allowed it to be with. That was just the first of many mistakes I would go on to make. It was also during this first initial window of dating that I also downloaded the infamous dating apps and hookup apps like Grindr and OkCupid. And looking back, I roll my eyes at how young and naive I acted. I boasted to have a good head on my shoulders, and I was more mature for my age, and I commended myself for being sensible to a point. But I was still so trusting to people that I barely knew. I was so quick to assume the best, and I was so quick to give so much of myself to anyone that would give me the time of day. This is where I would be stupid enough to use Grindr as a means to go on dates with guys in hopes that it could lead to something more substantial. Looking back, there were many instances where I didn't sleep with a guy after meeting him, like over coffee or something light like that. And I even played coy to say that nothing sexual was gonna happen because we hadn't been on an official date yet. And then I'd be left to wonder why I didn't hear from them anymore after that. They were obviously expecting sex, and naturally so, since we met on a hookup app. And I look back so embarrassed at myself in many situations and how stupid I probably came off to many guys. And it's even funnier now when I meet young people around 20 or 21 who act exactly how I acted at that age. It's like a phase all young people need to go through. Then I experienced a love that was so emotionally unstable and unhealthy. We loved each other, but we fought and collided so often and even broke up a couple times and then got back together. I rationalized making some truly reckless decisions because it was in this instance where I experienced the notion of accepting the type of love I thought I deserved. That he was committed to me in ways that no one had been, and that this was my intended great love. He was the first boyfriend of mine I moved in with. And so we moved in together and I moved away from home. I moved out of state for the first time, and he and I had only been together for 6 months. And like I said, we had broken up twice within those first 6 months. And then things only got worse after moving in together. And we broke up within the first 6 months of living together. The relationship goes down as the most emotionally abusive relationship I've ever been in. However, I still have some of the best memories with him. It's like when it was good, it was phenomenal. But when it was bad, it was a disaster. I also realized more of my own self-worth. What lines did I need to draw for myself? How much of myself would I need to compromise? I learned to stop saying sorry all the time for things that I didn't even do. I shouldn't be made to walk on eggshells. I shouldn't just sit there and take it because this is the best I will ever be able to do. I began to develop self-respect and learned the hardest of ways how I deserved to be treated. Unfortunately, that relationship did scar me in terms of how I perceive certain situations in relationships, and I do fall prey to those old bad habits that I still am trying to conquer even to this day. Throughout that relationship, we had broken up a total of 3 times, and the 3rd time stuck. Over time and living in a new place, I entered into other relationships where I, of course, learned even more valuable lessons. I experienced the type of love that was so caring and nurturing, the type of love that wasn't manipulative, and the type of love that was very different than before. But I learned that I also need more than just a cheerleader in my life. And what I mean by that is I consider myself to be a very driven and goal-oriented person who is constantly trying to better myself, anywhere from my own personal fitness to my career goals. And I need someone who takes initiative in all of those same areas for themselves. It's not enough for me to just have someone cheer me on and support me. They also need to be working on bettering themselves. And that way we kind of act as motivation for each other and hold each other accountable. So not only did I need someone who loved me the way I needed, but also someone equally as driven as I was. I went through a period in my 20s where I was single for nearly 3 straight years, and by choice. But this is where I changed so dramatically as a person, and for the better, when it came to love and navigating that world. It was then that I swore off dating apps or hookup apps altogether. I chose to go old school, where I immersed myself in the bar and club scenes and relied on meeting people in person and sparking new connections the old-fashioned way. And it was thrilling, and I always walked away with an interesting story, if not a newfound connection every single time. One of my favorite examples of this was a night where I was at a local bar, and there was this exceptionally attractive man that everyone was checking out. And after exchanging a couple glances at each other, I boldly wrote my number down on a napkin and walked right up to him while he was near the dance floor with his friends, and I slipped him the napkin as I locked eyes with him, and then I walked away. And even though he could have gone home with anyone that he wanted that night, he ended up texting me within a matter of minutes of me walking away and invited me back to his hotel. Like I said, old school phone number on a napkin, and so much more thrilling than a Grindr alert. But I was purposely not wanting nor seeking a relationship during this time. I was living in Arizona, but I needed to focus on my eventual move to California, and I couldn't get tied down by a boyfriend. It was the first long window of being single after coming out that I'd ever experienced, having gone from pretty much one relationship to another. I needed to learn more about myself. I needed to actually be more independent and not be defined by who I was dating, and just allow myself to enjoy being single. During this window is when I traveled more and experienced the thrill of being the new guy in town. The first time I was ever stood up on a date that only resulted in the bartenders taking pity on me and giving me free drinks. The first time I experienced a friends with benefits situation, which is very messy in and of itself, and also it was a great window of time where I learned more about my sexual side and the type of passion and sexual chemistry that I need. There was also a couple of what-if situations where I made a deeper connection with someone, but life events simply didn't allow for anything serious to develop, or I realized why we simply weren't meant to work out. That was my first lesson in falling for someone or feeling a connection with someone who also felt the same way, but the universe was simply pulling us in different directions. Kind of like a right person but wrong time sort of thing, which was a first for me. After a few years of being single, I justified entering into a new relationship that did eventually lead me to moving to California, but it was another hard reminder for me in the type of love that I deserved. By moving in together, I think we both learned what the other needed in an actual partner, and the pieces simply weren't fitting for us. It had been the longest relationship I'd ever been in, which was 2.5 years, and even though we didn't work out, I still don't regret the time I put in and how I evolved more so as a person. Being single now is incredibly liberating. I've had a total of 4 boyfriends since I came out 9 years ago. I've had my heart broken a number of those times, and each time has made me stronger. I grew up incredibly romantic and fleeting in my emotions and viewpoints about love, and even though I haven't abandoned that part of me, I've definitely grown a bit more cynical and increasingly mindful. My heart is definitely not on my sleeve anymore. Even now, living in LA and meeting new people, I'm still needing to stay a little on guard. It can be tricky, even when meeting new people or making new friends, and some of them approach you with other intentions or try to make a pass at you. There have even been times where even someone took me smiling at them as a green light to hit on me, which can also create for an awkward situation. Because there are those times I simply am seeking to make genuine friends, but other guys have other intentions. I have been cheated on before. I've been emotionally abused, but I've also hurt people before. I've kept secrets, and I've also been the other man before and come in the middle of another relationship. I've made reckless, embarrassing decisions. I've also been left in the dust and made to feel insignificant, and I've also been used. And being in the relationships I've been in, giving my heart to the men I have, being broken a few times, developing thicker skin, and learning the hard way the kind of love I need and deserve is some of the greatest lessons and takeaways I could ever ask for. My older brother put it perfectly one time and said that as young people coming out of high school, we need to make stupid decisions and get the shit out of our system. Well, I've definitely done my fair share of that, and I'm not claiming to know nearly everything, but I know so much more about myself in the 9 years since I came out. And learning those lessons the hard way was absolutely necessary. And better yet, I have so much more respect for myself than ever before. I know that being in love is an adventure, and I'll enjoy every moment of it when the next love is meant to happen. But until then, I'll make my own adventure and savor every minute of that because that's more than enough for me right now.